Good morning. We're back again with the PRman and the Coach Talking Ball podcast on the BallFather podcast presented by Sportskeeda. I'm your host, Reggie Roberts, longtime sports observer who spent a little close to 30 years working in and around the National Football League for 2 NFL teams and the league office. And today, as always, I'm joined by my super cool co-host, who was the number one pick in the NBA draft by the Boston Celtics, who's also coached in and around the NBA for close to 20 years. I'm joined by the great Sam Vincent. Hey, Sam, how are you, man?
Man, Reggie, I am doing fantastic. Good to see you. How are you?
Good to see you, man. Really good week. Lot of stuff going on in the NFL, and we've been working on that. But, I love the NBA for a lot of reasons. There's so many games and there's so many stories, and I'm so surprised. Maybe this is just me being naive, but there's so many storylines going on in the NBA, and they've only played 7 games. There's so much stuff that we're going to be able to cover, but it's good stuff. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good. I just wanted to, get your take on it since you are the expert, since you're the coach and you're the expert. Let's just dive right into this thing.
Let me say this, Reggie, before you even go into it. That's one of the things that I love about the NBA. The NBA starts in preseason, and you expect the Lakers to be there, and you expect the Celtics to be there, and you expect everything to go calm and there to be no coach firings, at least until All-Star Weekend. But you never really know what's going to happen with the NBA, and so we're getting a chance to see some of these stories that are developing and shaping what's going to happen throughout the course of this year. And I tell you what, it's going to be an exciting NBA season based on some of these early dramatics.
It really is. I was sitting there watching the TV last night. I'm real intrigued by the team that lives in the town that I live in. Banchero is getting. It seems if he just kind of stop turning the ball over, he's really an exciting player. He really is. They did a good job making him the number one overall pick.
Well, he's a fantastic player. He really is. And the thing that's so surprising is I don't think anybody knew watching him play at Duke that he had so many skills in so many different areas of the game. So I'm now seeing this guy, do the Kobe, turn around, fade away. I'm seeing him handle the ball, Reggie, and actually get in the middle and draw and kick and make plays for other players.
Right.
I didn't know he had that skill.
I didn't know he had that.
And he's an average to better. He's a pretty good 3-point shooter. So he's got range. He can score. The kid is 19 years old. I think I heard this morning them say that in 10 days he'll be 20. So this is an exciting young player that really, hopefully, and I mean this in all honesty, Reggie, I hope that Orlando Magic is able to build around this player. Because the history of the Magic has been they get good players and they get close. That's exactly right. And then they lose them. So hopefully this player is going to stay around for a while.
Yeah, that'd be good. Hey, just to get started here, we were talking about developments within the league. Brooklyn gave Steve Nash a pretty quick hook. I mean, for this to happen so fast, Sam, as a longtime NBA observer as you are, was this brewing? Was there some behind the scenes stuff that none of us know about, that you know about based on all your contacts within the NBA? Are you surprised that this happened as fast as it did?
Well, I'm not really surprised, because if we dial back to the end of last season, and maybe it was a little bit after the season where Kevin Durant came out and made the comments that he made. If Steve Nash comes back, I'm leaving. Over the course of the summer, he was asking that Steve Nash be fired. So I think from an organization standpoint, they decided, okay, we're not going to let the player win. We're not going to fire Steve Nash over the summer and look like we caved in to Kevin Durant's demands. But at the beginning of the season, we're going to gauge how things are going. We're going to gauge the team's success. We're going to gauge what the players are saying. And I've got to believe that at some point early on, Kyrie and Kevin Durant have gone in and said, hey, listen, if you don't change the coach, this is going to be a dismal season, and we're never going to get where we should go. So I think they probably did the right thing, and they pulled the plug early versus waiting until, 20 games into the season, and now they got a bigger hole to dig out of.
It's interesting. Now, correct me if I'm wrong on this. To me, you see this more in basketball, and maybe it's because it's less guys, but you don't really see this kind of thing in football where the star quarterback says, "Well, I want the coach fired," or the star defensive end says, "I want the coach fired." Why do you think, and maybe just let me know if my assumption is wrong, Sam. Why does it seem like this is more of a prevalent thing in basketball than it is in football, where superstars can come to the media and say, "Well, I want the guy out of here," and then in some cases the guy leaves or the guy's fired.
Well, I tell you my thoughts on it, and it could be corrected. I could be wrong, but in football you have a much larger team. You've got 60, 70 players, and all of those players, both on offense and defense, impact the team. They impact their wins. In basketball, specifically in the NBA, you got a much smaller team. So you got about 12 guys on the roster. And most times you got about 2 or 3 guys that are really the key players on the team. And when any 1 or 2 of the key players start to feel like you're going in the wrong direction, whether it's on offense or defense or philosophies or whatever, they're going to be a little bit quicker now to make that feeling known, because they feel that the team's not going to win in that case. Whereas in football, you got so many other moving parts. So I think that's why Kevin Durant came out and said, hey, whatever he identified as a deficiency with the coaching style of Steve Nash, he wanted people to know that his opinion was that they're not going to be successful as long as Nash was the coach.
Wow. Well, they got their wish, and he got his wish, and he's out of there now. There's just sort of segues into my next point. It looks like earlier in the week, Woj reported that Coach Udoka was going to be named within 24 to 72 hours. Seems like it's taking a little bit longer. And there's been all this stuff about, why would the Nets go with the guy this fast? Shouldn't they sort of take their time and evaluate it? But my take is this: this guy, by no measure, was 2 games away from winning the finals last year. So he's obviously a good coach. He's obviously a guy who can connect with the players. Why wouldn't they? Why haven't they pulled the trigger on that right now, Coach? Why haven't they done that?
Well, I'll tell you what I think, Reggie. I think first of all, if you back up to just for a second, why the Brooklyn Nets are not having success, and I've watched all of their games so far this season. They're a poor defensive team.
Wow.
They don't play deep. They don't play defense, and you can't blame. You cannot win in the NBA if you don't play defense. And you can't blame that on Steve Nash. That's not the coach's fault. So when I watch Kyrie, poor defender. When I watch Kevin Durant, he's long. He might block a shot here and there, poor defender. When I watch Ben Simmons, instead of stepping in and taking charge, he steps out of the way. So they're a poor defensive team. Now, can Coach Ime Udoka or some other NBA coach come in and introduce new defensive concepts? Maybe. Will he get on the players a little bit more to make them accountable if they don't play defense? Maybe. So there can be some things that a coach can implement that can enforce better defensive practices. And that's what it's going to take for Brooklyn. They've got all the scoring power. We know those guys can score. But right now, they're a poor defensive team. And why they wouldn't pull the trigger, to answer your question, I think there's so much media coverage right now. One thing I saw, Reggie, the other day was Keith Smart from the Boston Celtics. He had an article in the Boston Globe, and he said, when they said they were suspending Ime Udoka, Coach Udoka, they said they were suspending him for the year. But we all thought he was coming back at the end of the year. So now that opens a little door of drama for the Boston Celtics. Because if they were working hard for the interim head coach, thinking that the main guy was coming back, all of a sudden that's a little dynamic change in the chemistry. So I think Boston could be saying to Brooklyn, wait a minute, not unless they've officially terminated his contract, Brooklyn really can't sign him to a new deal. So I think there's a lot of things going on with Coach Ime Udoka right now. Right. And that's why he hasn't actually signed an official deal.
It's so interesting. You follow the league and you watch it. And you're right. They look a mess. I saw them the other night. They look like they're not interested. They look like, you're right. I remember the play you were talking about where, Ben Simmons, with all the talent, it was 6'6", whatever it is, stepped away from the guy to avoid the contact. I was like,
right.
Wait a minute. Your job is to get the ball back. Okay, so if the guy knocks you down, it gives you another possession on offense. So.
Right.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, whatever. So how do you see this working out? Do you see this working out in the favor where Udoka, who obviously the players like, and my sense is, if he wouldn't be a popular choice there, Durant would say that. Do you think he ends up there, or do you think they go through the process and maybe go find someone else?
I think they give it to Ime Udoka. And I say that because the season has already started.
Yep.
Now the course of the season for this year is hanging in the balance. The Brooklyn Nets were, I won't say they were a disaster, but they surely underachieved last season.
Sure.
So I don't think they want to go through another year of not being successful. So I think when you look out in the marketplace and you try to figure out who's a coach that can come in who has worked, he was a member of the Brooklyn Nets staff.
Correct.
And so when they hired Steve Nash as the head coach, there was a lot of people who thought that should have been Ime Udoka instead of Steve Nash. So he has been there. He has a presence with KD and some of those guys. The ownership knows him. They obviously feel like he's the right guy. And if they make the right decision, having come from the finals last year against Golden State Warriors, if he could get them back to the finals, man, that says everything for Ime Udoka.
Doesn't he have a relationship too with the GM? Didn't they work together in San Antonio? I think they worked together in San Antonio.
I think they did, him and Sean Marks. So
Yeah.
there's a relationship there.
Yeah.
They know his coaching skills. They know he's tough. He's connected to Popovich. I think now it's just a matter of doing the right thing so that the media doesn't turn this into a circus.
Is it early enough? I mean, of course it's early enough. I mean, they played 7 or 8 games. Surely they could, they get this guy, he comes in, they can get it turned around. But I think you're right. The whole, do you want to go through the whole thing of going 21 and 51 and having a bad season? That certainly no one wants that. So hopefully this gets resolved rather sooner than later. Sam, what's going on in Hollywood, man? You got the purple on. Are you on to help the Lakers get going? What's going on with the Lakers, man? Don't even look like the same team.
It's scary out there in Los Angeles. I tell you what, I now that we're doing this podcast, I find myself reading articles, newspaper all over the place. Yeah, I never really did that, Reggie. I got to be honest. I'm a basketball fan, but I never really read the articles. I didn't really care that much about reading what's happening in the LA Times.
Yeah.
But I read an interesting story the other day. Somebody said maybe it's Magic Johnson's fault. And I thought to myself, what did Magic Johnson do? So I read deeper into the article, and they said, well, it was Magic Johnson that brought LeBron James and gave up Ingram and all of the other players. They had a nice young nucleus, and by now they would be winning games if Magic Johnson hadn't brought LeBron James. So I only bring up that story because out there in LA, if you're not winning, people start pointing fingers. And right now they're pointing them at Magic, they're pointing them at Jeannie Buss, the owner. Everybody's gonna go down. And if they don't figure out how to win some games and turn this thing around, it's gonna get real ugly in LA.
I talked to my sons. Both of my sons are NBA guys. And one of my sons is a huge Russell Westbrook guy. And, I just, you and I have talked about this off air. I think he's a wonderful talent. I think he's a really, really good player. He's had a really, really good career. But I just don't think I still, like we talked last time, I still think, first of all, nobody on that team can shoot that. I saw a game the other night where they just showed the highlight where they were just clanging the ball off the back line. They were just missing a bunch of threes. And it just seems like every team he's on, he'll have one of those human highlight film games where he'll play great, but it usually doesn't translate into a deep run into the playoffs. And now AD's hurt again. He's missed some time with his back. He's hurt. What do you think it's going to take for them to get? They got the new coach and Coach Ham, who I know that you know. How do they get that? How do they get it turned around? And what needs to happen in your opinion?
Well, I tell you what. I think part of his injuries are psychological. I think when he took that shot, and missed, and LeBron put his hands in the air out of exasperation and walked the other way, from that point, he deflated a lot of air out of Russell Westbrook. But I want to go back to your comments, Reggie, because, I agree with you. Russell is and has been a good NBA player. Triple doubles, signed the max deal. He's been a good player in Oklahoma, in Houston, but his teams haven't won games. They haven't gotten deep into the playoffs. He cannot say that he's the guy that has carried teams on into the postseason and had a chance to win championships. And when I watch this team, and you mentioned all the clink 3-point shots they shot, the jumpers are falling off, I detect poor chemistry. And when the chemistry is bad on your team, for whatever reason, the energy is low. And when the energy is low, you're not feeling good. And when you don't feel good, you don't come out and play well. So I think right now the Lakers have got to change their chemistry. They got to get rid of Russell Westbrook. He's carrying $40 million this year that they owe him. Bring in a couple $5 billion guys that can shoot the ball from the outside, and then all of a sudden the chemistry gets better. And they still have to convince Anthony Davis to play a little tougher on the inside. Whether or not he can do that, I'm not sure. But if you don't have an enforcer down around that basket who's willing to take hard fouls, get the big rebounds, hit somebody when you got to hit them, knock them out, if you don't have that player, you're not going to go far in the league.
In other words, you're saying that you need him to turn into Rick Mahorn, is what you're saying. He needs to turn into Rick Mahorn.
Look at Steve Adams. Look at Steve Adams playing with Memphis right now. You take Steve Adams off that team. Steve Adams can't score better than me right now. But what he can do is he'll hit you, and he plays tough. He gives them a presence.
He's an enforcer. And they know when you come in there trying to dunk, you might get your mouth knocked out.
You're going to get your mouth.
You're right. The barbershop talk. You go and I go and get shaved. I'm a little ragged. So I'm heading to go get my shave here in a little bit. But the one thing the guys always they all talk about Russell. They talk about how great of a scorer he is, the triple doubles and MVP and all that stuff. And I said, guys, basketball and football and baseball, they're team sports. They're team sports. You're part of a team. The ultimate goal is to not be the MVP. The ultimate goal is to not win your division. Ultimate goal is to win championships. And as great a player as he is, he hadn't come close. He didn't do it in Oklahoma City. He didn't do it in Houston. And again, I'm going back to the clip that I saw of him that you and I shared a couple of weeks ago. The clip of during the preseason when Patrick Beverley was trying to get everybody together to tell him something. Everybody's in the huddle. AD's in the huddle. LeBron's in the huddle. The only guy who ain't in the huddle is Russell. So to your point about the chemistry seemingly from an optic standpoint, it looked bad during the preseason, and it's only gotten worse based on the record. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
That's a fair assessment, Reggie. And I thought you brought up a great point around how you win MVP. And the most valuable player on most teams is usually the guy who's giving the most of himself to make everyone else better. And so if you want to be the most valuable player, it's not about me. It's not about what you do. It's about how you make everybody else better. And that might be how you communicate on the floor. It might be how you play make on the floor. It might be how you give yourself up and sacrifice your shot to find somebody else. But that role as most valuable player is not just about you. It's about what you do on the team. And that's the one thing I don't see Russell doing.
Well, they got to get it figured out, okay? Because LA is one of those markets where if they don't win, people stop coming. The Rams aren't winning right now. They're struggling a little bit. They got to get it figured out, and they got to get it figured out sooner rather than later. My man James Harden, I'm a huge fan. He's hurt again. He's one of those guys that every year it seems like he's getting something. He's his toe, his foot, his ankle, his knee. If he's not playing, they're obviously the team's not going to be as good, especially with the way Doc Rivers wants to run that offense. What do you think they do? If they're saying he's going to be out for a month, maybe 5-6 weeks. What do you think they do in the interim?
Well, I think we got to call it like it is, and what it is James Harden's best years are over. He had a span of time when he was playing in Houston where he was leading the league in scoring. He was a 30-point per night guy.
Yep.
During that time, I wasn't a real big fan of James Harden because there's a 24-second clock in the NBA, and I used to watch him keep the ball for 23 seconds and then shoot it. So I'm never a fan of anybody who keeps the ball for the whole shot clock and then shoots it. In this game, you got to pass.
That bugs you from a coach perspective, from a coach who wants to move the ball, motion offense, all that. I can imagine that's kind of pissed you off.
Well, it pissed me off watching it as a fan because I wasn't coaching obviously at that time. But as a fan of basketball, I enjoy seeing the game be played the right way. Yep. And the right way to play the game is to pass and cut, set screens, have some ball movement, reverse side to side, and search for the best shot. Yep. And when you have any one player in the league who becomes the sole offense of the team, I got a problem with that. And that's what James became in Houston. But, I think the bigger problem, Reggie, in Houston was, and from what I heard from locker room conversation, was that not only was he a tough guy to play with on the court, but he was tough to play with off the court. So this is a guy who's your team leader. Practice is scheduled for, 1 o'clock. He might show up at 2:15. Team bus is going to leave to head to the hotel at 7 o'clock after practice. He's still in the locker room taking a shower, and they come out at 7:30. So these kind of little things destroy the fabric of a team. You need your team captain to be first. He's on the bus early. He's on the bus before everybody else. He's the guy that comes to practice 30 minutes early, not 30 minutes late. So we've seen a little bit of a pattern of James Harden, which is probably the reason why his teams also have not really excelled and gotten all the way to the final. Great player. I'm not taking anything away from him. Max contract, made a lot of money. He scored a lot of points. So far be it from me to say that he doesn't play the right way. But I'm just saying, from what I've observed, there's reasons why superstars on teams don't go to the next level. And sometimes they're just a little bit too selfish to take their team to the top.
You listen to the PR man and the coach talking ball on the BallFather podcast presented by Sportskeeda. Sam, I got to get to the next segment. I was greatly disturbed by what happened in Brooklyn with regards to Kyrie Irving. As you and I were talking, off air before we got on the podcast, seems like last year, he was in the headlines for what I thought were the wrong reasons. Again, I'm a guy who's a big proponent of conducting yourself with the team and doing everything that you can do to make the team better. You don't bring attention to yourself and you don't hurt your team. And I think the decision that he made last year with the vaccine status hurt his team. I think it hurt his team. I think if you look at the numbers, I don't even have to ask anybody from the Brooklyn PR department, but I know this. They win more games when he's in the lineup than they do when he's out of the lineup. That's just the fact. So he was in the news for the wrong reasons last year. 7 games into the season, he's in the news again for the wrong reasons. This time, he said something with the tweet. He acknowledged some anti-Semitic movie, and then he said some stuff, and then they asked him to apologize. He didn't apologize. Your employer sends out this statement that says this: we're of the view that he is currently unfit to to be associated with the Brooklyn Nets. Kyrie will serve a suspension without pay until he satisfies a series of objective remedial measures that address the harmful impact of his conduct. Now, just let that marinate just for a second, okay? When your employer, the people that pay you money, say that about you, to me that says two things. One, they're bitterly disappointed in how you've conducted yourself. And two, the relationship with this particular employer is probably got on the shorter day meter rather than the long day meter. So, tell me what you're hearing, tell me your thoughts, tell me what you're understanding about this, and why a guy who's as talented and as good of a player as he is always seems to find himself on the negative side of the headlines.
Well, I'll tell you what, just keeping it very real, Kyrie Irving is a very talented player. This is a guy that can play, two positions very easily. He can be the point guard or he can be the scoring guard, and he can do both of those positions very efficiently. So there's no question on whether or not he's a talented NBA player. The question is, what's really going on in Kyrie Irving's head? And nobody can really figure that out. So if we go back to 2021 and we look at the COVID issue, now COVID was a disaster for everybody. But the NBA finally got to a point where the games could resume. They needed all the players to comply and get their vaccinations, and probably 97% of the players complied. The one player that we know did not comply was Kyrie Irving. Now, I understand, Reggie, everybody's got some personal decisions to make and can have their own opinions. Even when you go against the team, I can't agree with it, but sometimes people have their own opinions. But what bothered me the most was Kyrie Irving would show up at the games with some sunglasses on and come sit in the stadium and watch his team play. So I just felt, if you're not going to take the vaccination, you're not going to show up with your team, go home. Right? Don't come to the arena in sunglasses and sit on the court side so that everybody can see that you've just given up on playing. So, that was the COVID situation. Now the anti-Semitic comments that he's made, that he's posted on his social media, first of all, when you're in the league, the league is going to be very sensitive when you're making comments or you're doing things that are drawing negative attention to the league. So because you're making $100 million or $200 million, I would think you would not do that. And if you made a mistake and you posted something in your social media that the NBA, Adam Silver said, hey, we don't know why he said that, then apologize.
Quickly.
Just say, you know what, I made a comment. Some people felt it was wrong. Maybe I rethought about it and it was not the right thing to say. I apologize. That's not very difficult. He refused to do that. He went into slavery and how this was wrong and how that was wrong. And so they finally end up suspending him. So Kyrie's got to figure out what he wants his legacy to look like. Right now, it's going from being a great NBA player to being a very troubled basketball guy. And if he doesn't fix that soon, over the next year or so, it's going to cost him money and it's going to damage the rest of his career. So I really wish him the best. I think he's talented. I think he's a smart guy, but he's making some real poor decisions. And maybe he's getting some poor advice. Nothing that I don't think he can't clean up, but it's something he's got to clean up real soon.
Well, just to finish up this thought, all you got to do is, my son say this to me all the time. Say, Dad, you got to be spatially aware, and you got to read the context clues. Okay, so if you're in the space of the entertainment space, you got to read, pay attention to what's going on in the world. Okay, Kanye West, recently kind of stepped in the same puddle with some of the anti-Semitic things that he said. Well, let me tell you what happens when you do that. When you say things like that, it costs you. Okay, Adidas says, bye-bye, Kyrie. Goodbye, contract. Gone. 3 or 4 other people that he was in business with have suspended the relationship. So I'm thinking longer term, after he serves this suspension, talking about Kyrie, the statement that the Brooklyn Nets sent out is troublesome. It's troublesome to me in a bunch of ways because what to me it spells is, you know what? We're going to cut bait on this $200 million contract and let you go become someone else's problem, despite how talented you are.
Right, absolutely. And you know what? Why go out that way? And more importantly, are you going to carry that attitude to the next team? So better to fix it now. You know, change your position on things. Stay quiet. Play your career. Have a fantastic basketball career. Wrap it up, and then if you want to be a politician afterwards, or you want to go into whatever, then do it post-professional NBA basketball. But don't do it now. It's the wrong time.
Well said. Well said. Let's talk about what's going on with the Golden State Warriors, who are obviously having an NBA championship hangover going into the first couple of games of the season. Steph's scoring and they're playing, but they had one on the road. They lost a tough one. I think it was last night. They lost a tough one to our Orlando Magic. They didn't look in sync there. They made some shots. Steph's turned the ball over late. I think that in football the Super Bowl hangover is real, and I guess in basketball the NBA championship hangover is real as well.
Well, we said at the beginning of the show that the beginning of every NBA season is going to have some surprises. There's going to be some things that we thought would happen that didn't happen, and there's going to be some things that we didn't think would happen that are going to happen. And I'm pretty sure neither one of us thought the Golden State Warriors would start off winless on the road, and even more would come into Orlando and play the 1-6 Orlando Magic and lose.
Yeah.
And so that's a big surprise for the beginning of this NBA season. The fact that the Warriors are struggling with their chemistry, not playing as well. We don't really want to blame it on the incident that happened between Draymond Green and Jordan Poole, which we've already talked about. But again, we said chemistry can sometimes affect teams. And so the Golden State Warriors as an organization, they were able to shut that situation down, cover it up, give him a fine, sign Jordan, and let's play. But have they really covered up the emotional side that we don't see? How does Jordan Poole really feel? What is Draymond Green's real feelings? How do the teammates feel about what Draymond did to Jordan Poole? So there could be some real residual effects of that sucker punch that Draymond did to Jordan Poole that may last longer than they wanted it to.
Let's just be real, okay? We both grown dudes and grown up people. I'm gonna just be straight up and tell you, I'd have a problem if a cat hit me in my face and then a week and a half, 2 weeks, 3 weeks said we're supposed to be cool. I'm not sure that would work for me. Matter of fact, I know that wouldn't work for me. And I know that there's probably guys on that roster who sort of like, they're trying to be good teammates, trying to let it kind of, they trust Steve Kerr because of his credibility and his track record with the team, not only as a coach, but as a player. They're trying to let the coach and then trying to, follow the coach's lead and say, okay, we're going to fine him an undisclosed amount. There are no secrets in the NBA, so everybody on the team knows how much he got to fine. I think you bring up a really good point. I think there's guys on the team that are having a problem with it, and I think it's showing up from a chemistry standpoint. It's showing up in the fact that whatever it is going on, we're not able to. We haven't been able to win a game on the road, and that's not good for anybody because half your games are played at home. 41 games are played at home. The other 41 played on the road. So, I think you're right. I think that there is some residual effect going on and that nobody's talking about, but they got to get that figured out quickly.
Well, they got to figure it out. And I think Coach Steve Kerr, he probably did what the coach had to do. And that's try to, brush it under the rug as quick as possible so that we don't have to deal with it in the media because the media can drag it out. You don't want to suspend the player because now you lose some games and all of a sudden you got bad chemistry at the beginning of the year. So I think Steve Kerr and the staff and the administration tried to do the right thing by, hey guys, let's stay focused on winning another championship. Let's give Jordan Poole his max contract. Let's reprimand Draymond Green, but let's not let this turn into something that's going to bother us. And by doing that, they might have did the wrong thing. Maybe what they should have done was said, you know what Draymond did was wrong. He sucker punched one of his own teammates, and because of that, he's going to be out for 20 games. And we don't care if we lose early on. You know why? Because we did the right thing. And usually when you do the right thing, even if it has bad results, the right thing was done. So I think ultimately what the Golden State Warriors did was wrong by allowing Draymond Green to come back so fast and trying to brush it under the table. And maybe that's now why they're really suffering and their energy looks really pathetic on the floor. They don't look like the sweet, cohesive, high energy, fun-loving Golden State Warriors that they've looked like in the past. Now they look like a team that's playing together and trying to figure out how to win. And when you lose one little spice, it changes the whole recipe. And that's what I think happened to the Warriors.
I think you're absolutely spot on with that, Sam, with regards from the perspective of, I think it sent the wrong message. Even though, you don't want it dragged out, but you kind of, you as an NBA team and as an NFL team, with where I have most of my experience, I used to tell our coaches and our front office people, there's a great book that's out by a guy named Marlon Fitzwater. Marlon Fitzwater was the press secretary for Presidents Reagan and the first President Bush. He wrote a book that every public relations person, I'm sure your beautiful other half is familiar with it, wrote a book called Call the Briefing. And in that book, Marlon talks a little bit about, controlling the message with regards to whether you're dealing with détente in China, Brezhnev in Russia, whatever it is, you've got to control the message. And I think what happens is, one of the things he talks about is, announce your own bad news, which is what we tried to do the whole time that I worked in Tampa, when I worked in Atlanta. If it's bad, if the guy's torn his hamstring, let's tell him. Let's not let him guess. Let's not let it leak out. Let's tell him. Announce our own bad news. In this particular case, I think announcing the fact that, what Draymond did was unacceptable. We're going to sit him for 10 games, sit him 12 games, whatever you decide. I think that would have sent a much stronger message, not only to the public, but the locker room. The locker room, which would say, hey, this guy's our enforcer. We love him. We need him. But what he did was wrong, and what he did was unacceptable. So as a result, we're going to police our own house, and to the detriment of our team, we're going to sit him. I think that would have sort of gone a little bit longer way to correcting this situation, to correct what you alluded to about how poorly they played. They're not the sweet outfit that normally, cuts to the basket. Steph's making threes, Clay's shooting it off the dribble. They're making, Draymond's being an enforcer. They're not that right now, and I think this has a lot to do with it.
Well, I definitely think the message that you would have sent to the team would have been, no matter who it is, superstar or 12th man on the team, we're going to treat every situation fair. And then I think what would have happened is the players would have came out and played harder. They would have made up for the difference of Draymond, because they would have been so excited, like, damn, the organization did what was right. Can you believe it? They sat Draymond down. I got to believe 90% of the players thought they ain't going to do nothing to Draymond. They're going to let him come right back on the team. And that's what they did. And by doing that, I think it actually had a little bit of a negative effect. So as a coach, I can tell you one thing that I always kept as a very important principle for me with all my players is treat them all the same. And we both know, Reggie, we've both been in sports. So you've got your superstar, Larry Bird, and then you've got your guy that's on the bench. So you're going to have some sort of preferential treatment on maybe how you communicate with them or maybe that, but it's all going to be held in a fair way with every single player on the team. Because as soon as you treat Larry different than you treat this guy, all of a sudden now you got dynamics within your team. And that's what I think they're going to have to get over.
Right. And that affects you. That affects you. That affects the chemistry. Guys see that this guy's getting treated a little bit differently. You're right. I think if they'd have done it the way you suggested, you might have taken it on the chin for a little bit early, but the dividends that would have paid down the road would have been astronomical. I really believe that.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what I think happens now. And I don't have a fortune ball, Reggie, but I think what happens now is they play this season out. I don't know. Is it going to be marginal? Will they get back to the Golden State Warriors? Maybe. But I think my prediction is that Draymond at the end of this season, he doesn't get the max contract that he wants, and he leaves. And he goes and he starts a new chapter somewhere else. And then the Golden State Warriors, they fill that position with someone who I believe is not going to be Draymond Green, but I still think they have all of the key components to still have a very strong team.
I think you're right. I tell you what, the one guy that doesn't seem to be having any problems getting out of the gate is that monster number 77 in Dallas. He's playing out of his mind. And listen, when he first got into the league, my oldest son, who wants a career, as you and I've talked about, wants a career in the NBA, wants to work in the NBA. He told me 4 or 5 years ago, before Luka got to the league, he said, "Dad, this guy's going to be a beast." And I'm thinking, he's a little slow. I don't really like his game. It just looks like he plays slow. Look, like he's playing in Monster's boots. He was, okay? He can shoot that thing. He can go to the hoop. He gets fouled. He goes to the line a lot. I mean, he is unbelievable. I saw him. I've seen him play live once, and it's incredible live videos. It's just he can shoot it from anywhere. Anywhere.
I tell you, Reggie, everything you said is 100% spot on. He is a magnificent offensive player. He really, really is. And again, if you read the game notes from the NBA, they make it clear that there's been no other player that have started off the season with 30-plus point average since Will Chamberlain. And so this is a pretty serious accolade to run up on, to be the first player since Will Chamberlain to at the beginning of the season start off with at least 7 consecutive 30-point games. Now, as much as I love Luka Doncic, and I do love him, I enjoy watching him play. When they start comparing him to the greatest players of all time, then I start looking, well, what is his deficiencies? Yeah, and so I quickly realized, yes, as great of a scorer as he is, he's a poor defender.
Very poor defender.
And this isn't the try to beat down Luka's show. I'm not doing that. But if we're going to talk about him in the same light of a Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or a LeBron, any of these guys who did it on offense, also carried the assists, they also were very solid defenders. And with Michael and Kobe, they were above solid. So if we're going to start to put Luka in that frame of being one of the greatest, he's got to start playing a little bit better defense, and he's got to stop complaining to the referees after they don't call a foul. Because I've never seen any NBA player that curses the referees out back down the court as long as Luka Doncic does. So he gets a lot of fouls called. And sometimes he gets a foul called that wasn't a foul. But when he doesn't get the foul called, he definitely gets the award for being the biggest complainer ever.
Well, the other thing is, anybody who's averaging 30 points first 7 games of the season, that's a huge thing. But it's early, okay? Wilt is Wilt. I mean, you talk about one of the greatest scorers, one of the greatest defenders in basketball history. What he's done, what Luka has done is impressive. Let's see where we are. We ain't even to the All-Star break. Let's see. We'll acknowledge that you've had a great start. Let's see if you can sustain it.
And that's my point. A lot of times these young players are measured up against some of the greatest before they played 5 years. If you go back to Zion Williamson with the Pelicans, before he came in, they were talking about he's going to be the next LeBron. He's the this, he's the that. The first 2 years, maybe he's played 30 games. So you got to wait to get to the end before you start talking about how great a player is. Not in the beginning.
Right. Correct. Okay. You're on the PRman and the Coach Talking Ball podcast presented by Sportskeeda. Just talk a little bit about the great start that the Milwaukee Bucks are off to. They're 7-0, which isn't that great of a surprise. They got the Greek Freak, he's playing. They get Middleton back, he's playing. I think the coach. I can't think of his name right now, but he's coached in Atlanta when I was in Atlanta. He's got them going. They got a tougher tonight. They go to Minnesota and they play Karl Anthony Towns and his boys, the Timberwolves. They got a tougher tonight. What do you think's going on there? I mean, they've got a good chance to represent, to get back to the finals like they did a year not last year, like 2 years ago they were in the finals. They got a chance to get back.
I think they have a fantastic chance to get back. In preseason and early on going into the season, there was a lot of talk about Boston. Obviously they were in the finals against Golden State, so everybody's thinking they can repeat. Everybody's talking about Philadelphia. People just want to see the 76ers get there. Even though they've done nothing to show that they can get there, people want to see Doc Rivers in the finals, and they want to see Embiid in the finals. But you got to earn getting to the finals. They don't just give you that. So there was a lot of talk about those teams. And then Brooklyn has been kind of tossed in there. But I've been really impressed with the way Giannis came back. And has been real focused as the superstar from the beginning. Sometimes the superstars, they take 10 or 15 games, they kind of relax, and then they get going. He's had it going from the beginning. And then the addition of Middleton coming back, man, that just puts them over the top. They have a smooth team. They're solid in the backcourt. They're solid in the front court. They got solid veterans now. They've got postseason play. To me, I see the Milwaukee Bucks coming out of the East. And if somebody's going to beat them, they're going to have to be playing some great basketball.
Well, here's the other thing they do. They defend. They play good defense. Okay? They play really good defense. Giannis is a really good defender. Middleton's a really good defender. I mean, it's just, you can tell when they play that the defense is part of the ball game, which, quite frankly, is a lost start in the NBA. Personal opinion, my own opinion. They play defense, and I think a lot of the stuff that they do on defense sets up their offense. So I think you're right. I think everybody's sort of on this whole Philadelphia thing, and I was teasing one of my reporter friends in Philadelphia early in the week. The Phillies are in the World Series. I hope they go down because I want Dusty to get his ring for the first 97. Time for Dusty ring. The Eagles are playing really well with Jalen Hurts, and offline, I'll tell you a little bit about that. But they will go to 8-0. First time they've been 8-0 in the franchise's history. Okay, so right. I think the natural phenomenon is to want the Sixers kind of just keep the whole Philadelphia national vibe going. Want the Sixers to get there to get to the final shoot. But you're right. They don't just give out those six. You got to earn that, and you got to go through Milwaukee to do it this year. I believe you got to do that.
You got to go through Milwaukee, and that's not going to be easy. And I'll tell you what, it's going to be fun watching the Eastern Conference. I'm going to really enjoy it. We talked about some things early. Can the Celtics pull it back together without Coach Ime? Can Brooklyn get Kyrie focused and Kevin and get the Udoka in there and turn this thing around? Can the 76ers, can Doc get it going? Can they actually, overachieve or at least achieve what they're supposed to? So the East is going to be real fun to watch to see who's going to come out of there. And I tell you what, we got the same dynamics going on in the West.
I tell you what now, just to finish up this point, tell me this. Just give me your opinion. I like the Sixers. I like Embiid. I think he's a dominant big man. I just wonder, do they have enough? I just wonder, do the Sixers have enough? Do they have enough? Does Embiid have enough complementary parts around him to help him get there? Do they have enough?
Well, I think they're really going to struggle now in the backcourt. I think the move to bring Harden in was not only for his scoring ability but for his playmaking as well.
Right.
And I think they wanted him to have some kind of leadership role as a veteran as well. So you unplug him now, and with Ben Simmons gone from the backcourt, you're going to struggle a little bit. And so I don't know if they're going to rely a little bit more on Tobias or if they're going to expect their backcourt guard play to really step up into some of those spots. But what I do know is Doc has got to find some sort of way to get someone to step in and be a solid scorer and playmaker for that team. And if that doesn't happen, then the 76ers are going to struggle.
Yeah, okay. I think you're spot on with that. What about the Cleveland Cavaliers? Like we talked about at the outset, we talked about some things that were supposed to happen. Like we talked about the Lakers. You're always looking for the big market teams are going to be there. Who saw Cleveland starting out at 6-1? Nobody. I don't think anybody when the preseason magazines came out to talk about the NBA, I don't think anybody penciled in that the Cleveland Cavaliers would go 6-1 out of the gate. I don't think anybody thought that.
No, nobody thought that, Reggie. Nobody thought Cleveland would be 6-1, and I don't know if anybody thought Milwaukee would be 7-0. But to me, again, those are some of the surprises of this NBA season. Donovan Mitchell, he leaves Utah and he comes to Cleveland, and all of a sudden, that's a different Cavalier team. So while we're looking at all these other teams, we have to think about the Cleveland Cavaliers. Right now, last time I checked, Philadelphia was down around 3rd or 4th. Boston is down around 3rd or 4th. Brooklyn is down around 5th. So some of these teams that we thought would finish at the top, they're down hovering around the middle. And the Cavaliers have sweetly snuck into that 2nd spot and playing great basketball.
Tell you what, now I love Donovan Mitchell. I loved him when he was in Utah. I think he's underrated. If Donovan Mitchell played anywhere other than Utah, if he played in Boston, New York, Philly, he's a household name in NBA circles, but like he'd be like household name nationally if he played somewhere else. He's a great player, and I think you're right. He brings great energy. He's a good scorer, and again, he's a really, really good defender. That helps. That helps.
Well, you're exactly right. He just hasn't had the marketing. He's been in Utah, and Utah is one of the smaller markets in the NBA. He's played well. They haven't gotten deep into reaching the finals, but they've gotten close, and he's been a 20-plus point scorer. So he's played some great basketball over his early career. He just hasn't been in one of those hot markets. And you know what? Going to Cleveland, that's not a real hot market either. So unless they do something extraordinary, like get to the Eastern Conference Final, and he has a great final, and maybe they go to the NBA Finals, he still won't get the household recognition. But you know what? In all of the NBA circles, with all of the players and the clubs, they know who Donovan Mitchell is. If you bring him on your team, he's a no-nonsense guy. He's going to work hard. He's going to give you points, and he's going to show up every game.
You're the PRman and the coach talking ball on the BallFather podcast. Sam, let's finish up talking about the Houston Rockets. I mean, 1-8. Kind of sloppy. I saw him the other night, kind of sloppy, turning the ball over. Not a lot of energy, not a lot of real fire playing. What's going on with them?
Well, I think it's a lot of carryover from last year. I think at some point, and nothing against Coach Silas, but at some point when a team is not at least playing hard for you, and the NBA is complicated in the sense that when you have superstar players, you're probably going to win games. If you have a young, up-and-coming team, you're probably not going to win a lot of games. But the one thing that you don't turn on and turn off is how hard you play. And so when you go on the floor, you got to run hard, you got to defend hard, you're going to miss shots, that's the game. But you got to, every single game, give yourself a chance to win. Even at the end of last year, the Houston Rockets were playing very sloppy basketball. The energy levels were low. Some games they looked like they cared, and some they didn't. And now that's kind of carrying over into this year. So I don't know how long Coach Silas can last if the team continues to play like this. But I tell you what, I don't think the fans are going to continue to come out and support that team if they can't figure out how to play hard and at least give them a product that makes them feel like coming out and support the team.
Yeah, there's too much stuff to do in Houston, man. There's too many restaurants. It's too much. It's too much music. It's too much stuff to do in Houston to be going to see somebody that's 1-8. Ain't nobody going to do that. I mean, who's going to do that? Nobody want to go see nobody play. I mean, the Texans aren't playing real well. They're not playing well. Tell you what, they can all go to Minute Maid Park and see Dusty get his ring. They all do that.
Well, I tell you what, you hit it spot on. Houston is a fantastic city. It's a good sports town, yeah. and there's a lot happening in that city. And the fans, they expect their sports team to come out, play tough, play savvy, play aggressive, and to win. And I think they can accept you not winning when you're young and up and coming and building. I don't know how long you can get away with that excuse. So they got to turn it around if they want people to come out and be supportive.
Listen, we're gonna let you go get that. You said you had to go take care of some personal date business. We're gonna let you get to that. We're gonna check out. We're gonna check your schedule and check out when you can join us again. But you know what? It's been exciting talking to you about what's going on in the league. You've got keen insight based on the fact that you played and you've got great context within the league. It'll be interesting to see how what takes place over the next couple of 3 days, and we'll get back together with you sometime next week. I'll check your schedule. We'll get back to you next week, and we'll do it again.
Fantastic. I guarantee you there's going to be more surprises and more upsets and more sweet victories. So I look forward to it.
Look forward to it. Sam, we appreciate it, man. We're going to take off. Hey, guys, thank you for joining us on PRman and the Coach Talking Ball and the BallFather podcast. Check us out next week when we try to do the same thing again. Take care. Sam, thanks, man.
You got it, Reg. You got it.